Hey, listeners, this is Peter, and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. In January of 1841, a 31-year-old lawyer in Springfield, Illinois, wrote a letter to his law partner. I am now the most miserable man living, he wrote. If what I feel were equally distributed to the whole human family, there would not be one cheerful face on the earth. Whatever I shall ever be better, I cannot tell. I awfully forebode I shall not. To remain as I am is impossible. I must die or be better, it appears to me. The man who wrote those words was Abraham Lincoln. 20 years later, he would become the President of the United States, carrying the weight of the bloodiest war in American history, holding the country together through its darkest hours, and delivering some of the most profound words ever spoken about suffering, purpose, and endurance. He did all of it while fighting a battle that his friends witnessed, his contemporaries documented, and history has been slow to fully acknowledge. Abraham Lincoln lived with chronic, recurring, at times life threatening depression. Our history brief today is an excerpt from this Friday's Conversation series episode and a conversation with Hans Zeiger, the president of the Jack Miller Center, a nationwide nonpartisan education venture focused on civic education. The full video of the interview is already available to our Patreon subscribers and will be released on our YouTube channel this Friday, as well as on all podcast platforms. A quick word from our sponsors. This day in history. On July 22nd, 1933, aviator Wiley Post became the first person to fly solo around the world, completing the journey in just over 7 days, and proving the growing potential of long distance aviation. On July 22nd, 2011, Norway was struck by twin terrorist attacks carried out by Anders Behring Breivik, a bombing as well as a mass shooting claiming 77 lives, making it the deadliest attack in the country since World War II. Story of the day. The 19th century had a word for what Lincoln experienced. It called it melancholy. It was not considered shameful in the way later generations would treat mental illness, but it was recognized, discussed, and observed. And in Lincoln's case, the observations were remarkably consistent. His law partner, William Herndon, who knew him as well as anyone alive, described it in a single unforgettable sentence. His melancholy dripped from him as he walked. Friends and colleagues across 3 decades described the same man, a man who could hold a courtroom or a crowd spellbound with humor and storytelling, and who, in the quiet moments between, would sink into silences so deep and so dark that people who witnessed them never forgot. The pattern had roots in childhood marked by loss. Lincoln's mother, Nancy, died when he was 9, taken by milk sickness on the Indiana frontier. His older sister, Sarah, who had helped raise him after his mother's death, died in childbirth when he was 18. By the time he arrived in New Salem, Illinois, as a young man, the people who met him described someone already carrying something heavy. Their first documented crisis came in 1835. Lincoln was 26, living in New Salem and close, by most accounts, very close, to a young woman named Anne Rutledge. In August of 1835, Anne died of typhoid fever. She was only 22. Lincoln's grief was so severe that it alarmed the entire community. Neighbors described him as dangerously despotent. He told one friend that he could not bear the idea of the rain falling on her grave. His friends became so concerned for his safety that they kept watch over him. staying close, refusing to leave him alone, quietly guarding a young man they feared might not survive his own grief. He obviously survived it. But the people of New Salem had seen something they would remember when historians came asking decades later. This was not ordinary sadness. This was something that nearly took him. The second great crisis was the one that produced the letter. In the winter of 1840 to 1841, Lincoln's engagement to Mary Todd collapsed. The circumstances remain debated by historians, and Lincoln fell into a breakdown so severe that he was unable to attend the legislature for a week. He referred to the period afterward with grim precision as that fatal 1st of January. His friends once again feared for his life. His close friend Joshua Speed later recalled that Lincoln's friends removed from his room anything he might use to harm himself and watched over him through the worst of it all. It was during this period that Speed had a conversation with Lincoln that would echo across the rest of his life. Speed told him he must recover or he would die. Lincoln replied that he was not afraid to die. But, and this is the sentence that matters here, he said that he had done nothing yet to make any human being remember that he had lived. He wanted, he said, to link his name to something that would benefit his fellow man. That desire, to do something worth being remembered for, was, by Speed's account, the thing that held him to the world. What is remarkable about Lincoln's story is not simply that he suffered, it is how he learned to live with it. He built, over decades, a set of strategies that modern readers will recognize immediately, because they are, in essence, what people who manage depression still do to this day. He used humor constantly, deliberately, almost medicinally. His endless supply of stories and jokes was famous, and he was honest about its function. I laugh, he reportedly said, because I must not cry. He used poetry, memorizing and reciting melancholy verse, particularly a poem called Mortality by William Knox, which he recited so often that people assumed that he had written it. The poem gave his sorrow a shape and a language. He used work, throwing himself into law, politics, and eventually the presidency with focus that left less room for the darkness. And he used purpose. That conversation with Speed in 1841, the desire to accomplish something worth being remembered, became the organizing principle of his life. He did not defeat his melancholy, he harnessed himself to something larger than it was. The presidency tested every strategy he had. The Civil War killed on a scale no American leader had ever confronted. His son Willie died in the White House in February of 1862 at the age of 11, a loss that devastated both Lincoln and his wife. Visitors to the wartime White House described a man whose face in repose was among the saddest they had ever seen. And yet, the qualities that the war demanded, the ability to absorb catastrophic news without collapsing, the refusal of easy optimism, the capacity to look directly at suffering and not turn away, the profound empathy for the grief of others, were qualities that Lincoln's decades of melancholy had, in a terrible way, prepared him for. The historian Joshua Wolf Shank, whose book Lincoln's Melancholy remains the definite study of this subject, argues that Lincoln's depression was not something he succeeded despite. It was woven into how he succeeded. His realism, his humility, his lack of illusion, his second inaugural address, with malice toward none, with charity for all, spoken by a man who understood suffering from the inside. The melancholy did not disqualify him from greatness. It shaped the particular kind of greatness that he achieved. As we know, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in April 1865, days after the war's end. He was 56 years old and became arguably the greatest president in American history, not in spite of what he carried, but carrying it the whole way. The History Brief. The following is an excerpt from this Friday's Conversation series episode in a conversation with Hans Zeiger, the president of the Jack Miller Center, a nationwide nonpartisan education venture focused on civic education. Just a reminder that the full video of this interview is already available to our Patreon subscribers and will be released on our YouTube channel this Friday, as well as on all podcast platforms.
We have to recapture the spirit of service and sacrifice and the kind of character that goes with that. If we're going to have another 250 years, there's nothing guaranteed about this experiment in self-government.
So I guess the big question is how do we go about doing that, right?
That's right. Well, I think, again, we have to have a paradigm shift in our education system toward the civic purpose of that education. That has to happen at every level. I would also say that those of us, who are in leadership roles, can play a fundamental role in all of this. We can do that through example, and we can also rally our fellow citizens to get involved. I think there's a lot of people out there who are looking to get involved. They're just not sure where to start. So, whether you're involved with a historical society, whether you're involved with a Rotary Club, whether you're involved with, a neighborhood council, whatever it is, there are a lot of people around you who would get involved in that thing if you went out and tried to recruit them.
Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you're enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars to buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. And I invite you guys to check out our Patreon membership, where you could get access to videos and interviews weeks before they air. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.